But how many Daniels made this film? Two. It was two Daniels that made this film. This is an incredibly popular film. I don't know why. I've read and listened to some of the positive reviews, and there are a lot of them, and I agree with some of the things in there. The acting is very good. The action is very good. The special effects team did well. The special effects are very good indeed. And I'm sure you already know that, because there's been a military-grade propaganda campaign making sure that no one can miss it. It's at the top of Reddit, it's at the top of Twitter, it's on every website that talks about this sort of subject. It's mentioned in almost every positive review for this film. The inspiring story of how a team of 5 or possibly 9 special effects artists beating the thousands of people chained to their desks in Disney's CGI slave caves. The critical drinker seems very impressed that there are old people in the movie, and Sardanicast felt the same way. He also seems to think that the massive writing problems don't matter, and that the film shouldn't be taken seriously.
Well, that's kind of the point. This isn't a movie that's meant to be taken literally or viewed as some kind of serious science fiction thriller.
Well, perhaps that's right, but is there anything to be lost by actually writing it well? Now, I don't want to single out the critical drinker, but that's just a bad take. Massive writing problems don't disappear just because you like some of the wacky action sequences. That does draw attention to one of the many problems though, which is the tone. They have the wacky, far-fetched science fiction stuff, like the hot dog finger universe, but then they have the emotional scenes that are meant to be taken seriously. Characters get killed, people attempt suicide, there's a big emotional montage of someone learning that life might be worth living. You can't try to be poignant and dramatic and then pretend that the stupid stuff isn't a problem because it's just a frivolous fantasy film. You can't expect us to take your film seriously as a poignant family drama, but then as soon as any problems are raised, go for the defense that it's just a film about space wizards aimed at children. I really hate contrived drama. When the writers make two things happen at once, that's normally just a lazy crutch for the writing. Here, Michelle Yeoh is contacted by her husband from another universe. He has to tell her that there is a threat to the entire multiverse, while secretly knowing that it's their own daughter. That ought to be a situation with almost limitless potential for drama and tension, but the writers can't figure out how to capitalise on that. So they just have the conversation take place during a tax audit. It's bad enough that this is contrived like that, but the two situations aren't equivalent. If you're either receiving messages from an alternate universe or hallucinating that this is the case, maybe the appointment at the tax office can be put on the back burner for the moment. So, two situations, both badly written, certainly aren't engaging to the audience, but you can't make them engaging by simply having them both take place at the same time and intercutting between the two conversations. And let's talk about the concept of the multiverse. It always seems stupid to me, especially an infinite number of universes, which are all different but somehow have the same people in them. This film takes it to the next level though, and obviously I'm talking about the hot dog fingers. I get that it's a joke, but again it's bad to have a significant part of your poignant family drama being a stupid joke. Also, it doesn't make sense. I suppose this is one of the things that doesn't matter, doesn't have to make sense, because it takes place in a frivolous fantasy film, but to me it matters. And really, why shouldn't it make sense? But here, opposable thumbs are apparently a disadvantage. How did the hot dog finger monkeys beat the normal monkeys? How did Michelle Yeoh still get born into a completely different world with a completely separate species of humanity? And if they use their toes like fingers, then why haven't they adapted to have better toes? Or why haven't their pianos been designed in such a way as to cater to toe players instead of finger players? Okay, I'm putting too much thought into the world building, but the writers should probably have done the same thing, right? So the characters can transfer their consciousness to other versions of themselves, and can also take skills held by other versions of themselves. The mechanics of how this works don't make sense. Firstly, they use these ear devices to do it. They don't seem to be able to physically travel between universes. So where did these ear devices come from? How did they get those to the main universe? Then there are the laws of physics. How does increased lung capacity transfer? Why is Jamie Lee Curtis able to pick up fully grown people and throw them? How does a middle-aged woman get superpowers? Because she gains knowledge that she has in an alternate universe. This stuff doesn't make sense given the established rules, and nor does the weird shit. Their computers are meant to give them things to do, which will connect them to their alternate selves, as their alternate selves have done these weird things. Put your shoes on the wrong feet and you connect to the version of yourself that put their shoes on the wrong feet. That's how it works, until it doesn't. People just start doing weird shit because the director thought it'd be funny, snorting the fly, inserting the butt plug, and this is enough to give them the special knowledge that they require. There's no reason that this should connect them to the relevant versions of themselves, but it does, because the director was having fun instead of actually making a good movie. Another big issue, and maybe the core issue, maybe the biggest possible issue for a poignant family drama where we're supposed to relate to the characters and sympathise and empathise and trying to follow their relationship drama with each other, is that these characters are giant pieces of shit. The first time this becomes clear is when the main character is having her taxes audited, and then she finds herself in a cupboard in an alternate universe. Her alternate husband tells her this is just a universe they are using for communication, and then the villainess arrives and snaps his neck. At no point does anyone seem to care about him dying or any of the other deaths. That's a person, that's not just a suit for the alternate to wear. And this is the problem with the whole poignant family drama aspect. We see the daughter murder people. Lots of people. We see her own father and grandfather desperately trying to save people from her. And then the climax of the film is expecting the audience to be invested in this character's decision to kill herself. They establish that character as someone that we want to die. That we should want to die. And then they expect us to be invested in her decision. They set this character up as someone who poses a threat to existence itself. Someone we should want to die. And then the emotional climax of the film all centres around whether she will choose to commit suicide or not. I was hoping she would, and I just don't care. I see these evil people. I see the evil people crying about their own emotional trauma, and I don't care. Just like they don't care about all of the people that they killed over the course of the film. So, contrived drama and crying murderers. That's film of the year for some people. And then there's the last flavour of the month, The Northman. It's amazing how many people seem to think that this is a historically accurate film. Admittedly, there aren't any black women running Viking clans, which I suppose makes it better than some things, but still not strictly historically accurate. After the first shot of the movie, I was actually quite optimistic. I noticed that this kid was wearing red. People rarely wear red in historical dramas of this sort. People wear brown and green and earth colours because ignorant people think that that's what people dressed like in the medieval period. In reality, the medieval period was incredibly gaudy. People wore bright colours, stripes and patterns, and red was the most common colour of all, simply because the dye was the cheapest. And there were some other positives too. I noticed the Viking warriors holding their saxes in sheaths that were horizontal on the belt, so that's very historically accurate. Unfortunately, the rest wasn't quite as good. Most of this stuff is standard historical inaccuracy from Hollywood. It's not the unusual stuff like the black women running Viking clans, but it's people wearing brown and green. It's the wrong architecture, it's the wrong wall coverings, it's just everything being wrong. We should see the bright colours and the bright patterns. We should see a different form of architecture, especially in Iceland, where buildings were largely made out of turf. We should see a different social organisation, especially in Iceland. We should see armour actually working. We should see fortifications being effective defences. We should see archery being effective against people who aren't wearing armour. We should see people going into battle wearing armour. We should see people taking spears into battle. We should see people who are not in battle, not wearing armour, and not carrying spears and other battlefield weapons. So in terms of historical accuracy, it's pretty standard Hollywood stuff. Not unusually bad. Not uniquely bad, but also not particularly good. A couple of nice little touches where it is accurate, a few little things where it's not, but a lot of that stuff is speculation. Like the sports, they did have sports in Iceland. We don't know the exact rules, so this one is obviously speculative, but not particularly bad. But because it's standard Hollywood fare, it's very dull. It's very medieval peasant. It's a sort of stereotypical idea. It's not the bright, gaudy stuff that there should really be in this historical period. And another problem is that the protagonist is once again an extremely unpleasant and unsympathetic character. And I think this is something that a lot of people see, wrongly, as being historically accurate. That the main character is a blood-soaked psychopath who goes around murdering everyone who looks at him funny. Because people see the past as being bloody and unpleasant, which it often was. But in this case, It's not. The world really isn't like that. It wasn't like that in the historical period, and it really isn't like that in the film either. What's really going on, as Nicole Kidman highlights in her first scene with Alexander Skarsgård, is that the world isn't a bloody and violent place, except for the part around the main character, because he is a violent lunatic. And I think a lot of people, both people who like this film and people who dislike this film, are seeing it as an action movie where the main character goes and takes murderous revenge. But it's not really meant to be that. This character is not meant to be the hero. This character is the villain of the movie. The protagonist is very much evil and psychopathic. And I do think that's well portrayed and rather subtly portrayed in the film. But that still leaves the core problem, which is that the story isn't really very interesting, except as a revenge tale, and it's not very interesting as a revenge tale because the main character isn't sympathetic enough. So as someone with an interest in the Icelandic sagas, I'd say that basically any of them could have been adapted in a way that would have been more entertaining than this film. And I just don't really think that either of these films have focused, as they probably should have done, on the storytelling. Instead, they focused on the hoity-toity, artsy-fartsy, namby-pamby A24 style, which seems to exist to the exclusion of all possible substance. So again, I struggle to understand the popularity of these two movies with the online critic community. Perhaps the people are just so fed up with what they're normally given that these sorts of outliers become considerably more appealing, and I would understand that. But also, these still aren't very good, and specifically are lacking in the writing and the narrative and characterization, the things that make a script actually worth watching, and no amount of production values can really make up for that.